This mini lesson is on pronunciation, the difference between E as in feet and I as in fit. The context for this lesson is my teaching context at Saudi Electronic University, although I planned this lesson with my own learners in mind who are at the A2 level. This lesson could be used at other levels because it is not dependent on vocabulary knowledge. There are two objectives for this lesson. The first is to recognize the difference in the vowel sounds E and I, and the second is to correctly identify the written forms for the vowel sounds. Because this lesson is supposed to be impromptu, the only materials that I considered were those that I always have access to: the whiteboard markers, and the e-podium and projector. The warm-up should only take about a minute. Inform students that you will work on some pronunciation and elicit the meaning of pronunciation so that the weaker students understand what you're talking about. The teacher will speak and the students will listen. You want to inform the students that they are listening for differences. Say the minimal pairs: ship, sheep, fit, feet, hill, heel, and try to elicit the difference in pronunciation. Once students recognize the difference in pronunciation, try to elicit the spellings and then write the words on the whiteboard. As a whole class, practice the pronunciations in choral drills. After warming up, it's time to practice recognition of the written forms. On the whiteboard, write grin, green, pill, peel, slip, sleep, still working with minimal pairs. This will require volunteers from the class. Have a volunteer student come up to the whiteboard and then call on volunteers from the class to say one of the words randomly. And the student at the whiteboard has to touch the correct form that they hear, with help from the class if they need it. If you are pressed for time, you could simply point to the word yourself and then call on students to pronounce it. After some practice, I would want to draw the students' attention to the fact that the sound E could be represented by more than one form. I would particularly want students to notice the form EA because it's very common, as in the words please, eat, each. To help this along, I could use the minimal pairs bin and bean and write those on the whiteboard and ask students to pronounce the words. As a whole class, students could brainstorm a few more examples of their own. At this point, you could move on to a wrap-up, or if you had more time, you could move on to a game. And I'm including the description of the game in the next slide. If you have time for a game, you could have the students brainstorm words in pairs and have them write their words on scrap paper. Break the students to two groups and have them form two lines. In my own classroom, this is easy to do because the chairs roll away to the sides of the room. As the teacher, I would stand at the front of the room and write minimal pairs on the whiteboard based on the examples that the students gave me. The students would need to race each other to the front of the room and touch the correct word on the board that they hear. To make it more challenging for advanced students, you could create false or fake minimal pairs, but you would need to make sure that you inform students that some of the words are technically incorrect. Scores could be tallied on the whiteboard. For a very quick wrap-up, you could elicit words with E and I sounds from students and ask them to spell them. As the teacher, I would write them on the whiteboard. I would also want to make sure to tie the pronunciation mini lesson into the topic or the text that initially prompted the discussion. The entire lesson would take about 13 to 15 minutes if you included the game, but you could make it shorter by eliminating the game. And thank you for watching.